Liberty Blue Rangers Podcast. With Andrew Chelney and Nick Zararis.
Rangers fans. Andrew? Oh no, Nick. What were you gonna say before? We thought we planned this out, and yet, Nick, what were you gonna say real quick before we start?
No, I was gonna say, how you doing, Andrew? Are you enjoying your Halloween before you do the introduction?
I was doing well. I was gonna ask you what your whole setup here was in a second, and then we, kind of ran over the intro. But you know what's good? It's fine. We're okay. We're doing well. Let me ask you about what you've got going on here in a second. Before before I do that, let me run through this intro that I have prepared and people have been expecting to hear from us. So, Rangers fans, welcome to the best Rangers podcast in town. I am Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis, and we are Liberty Blue. We scream about the New York Rangers so that you can save your voice. That's how deeply we care about you, and we appreciate that you've joined us for the ride. This is episode 20, live on Twitch. We'll put the full video up on our YouTube, Liberty Blue Podcast, and the audio version will be available as an audio podcast as well. Search Liberty Blue on your favorite podcast platform, and it should be there. Give the show that shiny and illustrious 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you can rate and review it. Helps the show out more than you think it does. At Liberty Blue Pod on Twitter and Instagram, at Chelney Andrew, CHELNEY Andrew, and that is Nick Zararis, Nick ZARARIS. Are our personal Twitter handles to follow as well. Nick, sources say you've lost a bet, and this is why you are wearing such heinous, interesting, strange attire. Is that true?
Yeah, the Rangers lost to the Islanders on Wednesday, and I sat through that game with one of my Islander fan friends. And one of the stipulations for that evening was based on the outcome of the game. And you can see I'm wearing an Islanders giveaway shirt and a clown nose because I'm a clown and put my faith in the Rangers not disappointing me.
The Islanders seem to always beat the Rangers for some reason. Like it's no matter how bad the Islanders are, no matter how good the Rangers are, in recent years, it's always been like the Islanders are just there to ruin the hopes and dreams of the Rangers. I don't know what that's about. I know Sorokin played very, very extremely well, and we'll get to that game a little bit later on. But the Islanders seem, for whatever reason, they have the Rangers number.
It's a rivalry game, man. The cliche that the football heads love to say, you throw the record books out the window when these rivals get together. Anything can happen. I mean, the Islanders would give the Rangers a hard time when Jack Capuano was the coach, when Doug Waite was the coach. When they weren't particularly good, they would still give the Rangers a hard time. So it's just one of those things. And now that they have a bona fide elite goalie in Sorokin, this rivalry is just all the more annoying because for whatever reason, the Islanders give the Rangers fits.
They every game, like we said, the Islanders could be 0-81, the Rangers could be 81-0, or 0-81 for that matter as well. For whatever reason, like these games are always scrappy. They're always scrappy because it's the Rangers and the Islanders, but like the Islanders, I can't really remember the last time the Rangers beat the Islanders, and I know the Islanders like don't have this incredible streak or anything, but like the Islanders, I feel like in the past, I want to say 5 years, have pretty much always won the games, and that's I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason to it. I feel like the Rangers a lot of the times, like maybe their puck luck doesn't go their way, or the Islanders kind of dominate, or what have you. But I remember like one of the last ones I really remember was the overtime game a few years ago. I think it was Zibanejad or Panarin, whoever it was, like stepped up. It was 3-on-3 overtime, and off the right circle was a slapper, and it went into the net, and like that's like one of the most memorable recent wins I can remember. That was a few years ago. Like, I feel like the Islanders win a lot of these.
So the only time the Rangers beat the Islanders in the regular season last year was the game in November where the Islanders were playing 10 AHL forwards and 2 NHL players because their entire team had COVID during that stretch where their entire team had COVID and they didn't have a home arena. So it's been a while since the Rangers have played well against the Islanders. And it ties into one of the themes of today's episodes where we talk about puck luck and things of that nature. The clown nose shadow is too bad. Can't have that in the video for now. When I'm not talking, I will put the clown nose on just for effect, but the shadow's too bad. But to Andrew's point about the Islanders and style of play, this has been something I've worked on and off for the better part of 4 years now of trying to diagnose the Rangers' offensive problems because they've had the goaltending to be a good team. They have the talent on the back end to be a good team. For the Rangers to truly be a Stanley Cup contender, they're going to need the offense to be more consistent. They're going to need multiple ways to score. They're going to have multiple lines contributing to their scoring total, and they're going to need the secondary guys to not be below water. If they're treading water, that's fine. If nothing happens, like what's been going on with the third line, even without Hedel, you can swallow that, live with that. That's fine. But if you're not going to score 4 goals a game, 3.5 goals a game, that's your sweet spot at all situations where you're going to need that to win most nights. You're going to have a hard time winning in the playoffs. You're going to play against other teams who have elite goalies like the Islanders, who if you can't win a hockey game 0-0, eventually you're going to have to score. But before we get to the Islander game, we'll start with the Colorado game, which that was how I kind of figured that was good reassurance. Like, they lost the 2 games prior to the Colorado game, but them playing that well against the defending Cup champions, coming off a couple days off, the Rangers looked like a good hockey team. The game didn't look too fast for them. They generated a lot of offense. As you're about to see here when I pull up the visual, they can wait. No, that's the wrong one. That's embarrassing. Hang on. Bad radio.
Unlucky. The Rangers have they stopped with the revenge games. Well, I guess the Patrick Nemeth revenge game was last night, and the Rangers won that. But they haven't had the greatest record in revenge games, and after the overtime win, you can see how Colorado and especially Alex Georgiev reacted to winning and beating the Rangers. Like, Alex Georgiev was shut out of a cannon. Like, he was the happiest man on the team. Obviously, when you're on the Rangers for a long time and then you get traded, you want to show the team that you got traded from that, hey, like, you made a mistake trading me. I'm gonna show you what I'm made of, kind of thing. It was a revenge game for Alex Georgiev, and it was very clear to see. And to give him credit, he played well. Like, he didn't have a lot of those Alex Georgiev trademark games or moments that we saw him have in a Rangers jersey. So to his credit, he played well, at least well enough for the Avalanche to cover up a lot of the things that were going on in between. And ultimately, the Avs were able to score one more goal than the Rangers, and Alex Georgiev is very happy about it. So they played well 5-on-5. This is, like you said, I agree with you. It does give me a little bit more reassurance of how this team plays. It doesn't help that they showed up to Columbus and those other games as if like they didn't care, because as we saw yesterday, the Devils played the Blue Jackets and absolutely dumpstered them. The Columbus Blue Jackets didn't want to be there. Their goaltending was bad. Like, there was just a lot of the New Jersey Devils just skated circles around the Blue Jackets last night, and it wasn't even close. So when you lose to a team like that, to come back after a couple of days and play toe-to-toe with the Stanley Cup champions, it's pretty good. Now, they probably should have won because Alex Georgiev was in net, and he's not a very good goaltender. But overall, they played well, and that gives me hope.
Okay, so the one thing I want to touch on with Georgiev, because this is a real discussion that's been had, and the thing with Georgiev was he wasn't very consistent. He could, on occasion, give you a very good game. He'd also give you the games where he couldn't stop anything. And because he played so infrequently, especially last year, the bad moments felt like they were more present because he had a reasonably smaller workload. When you have a smaller workload, the more mistakes you make, the more present they feel. It's like trying to explain crime statistics to people. Well, yes, it seems like there is more crime in this area. There are 8 million people who live in this area as opposed to who live in pick whatever county you want in upstate New York. There's levels to this. Trying to make these comparisons with numbers, it's not the easiest thing. So I got the slideshow convenient. So real quick here, I was able to pull it up real quick. Yeah, the Rangers won the expected goals battle in all situations. Most of it coming on the power play, even though they didn't score on the power play in that game, which was a cause for concern, especially considering they went on a really bad dry spell last week. They went 1 for 15 going into the game on Saturday against Dallas, and we still got to talk about the Islander game first. But if they're going to play like this at 5-on-5, you feel a lot more confident about eventually getting the right result. We talk a lot in sports about, is your process good? Because if you have a good process over a long period of time, that traditionally means eventually you will get rewarded. Now, in hockey, which is a high variance sport with so many variables that go into every single play, because the state of the game is so inherently chaotic, where you have players changing on the fly. It's not during stoppages like in other sports, where you have things like pucks ricocheting off of sticks, off of body parts, off of posts, off of goaltenders. There are just so many little inputs that go into every single play. An imperfection in the ice. If there's a divot in the ice and the puck skips it, that changes the direction of the puck. The goalie gets beat because there's an imperfection in the ice. No other sport has that. There are so many little things that go into hockey, and it's why last week especially, and I'll transition to the Islander game here talking about it in this regard, it felt like they couldn't have scored last week if the net was empty, especially in that game against the Islanders where they played pretty well. Yeah. I know after the game, Gallant was like, I wasn't that happy with it. It's great we had all these chances, but we didn't score any of them. I mean, eventually they go in. It's a long season, and if they are going to play like they did against the Islanders, most nights they'll be fine because not every team in the league has an Ilya Sorokin.
The thing, I think I tweeted this either after the Avalanche game or the Islanders game. I can't remember which one it was, but it doesn't really matter. My tweet was the Rangers last season played very poorly at 5-on-5, and yet they won games. The Rangers this season, at least to this point, now they have played better against Dallas and Arizona, but those are teams, at least, I mean, Dallas is off to a good start, but Jake Ottinger kind of inexplicably left the ice in the middle of a game. We didn't really get an explanation to it until way later, right?
Yeah.
I tweeted that the Rangers team last season 5-on-5 was bad, but they kept winning games, and the Rangers this season are pretty good at 5-on-5, and they keep losing games. It's like hockey is such a stupid and silly and weird sport that doing well on the ice for 60 minutes doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win the game. And other sports, if you control the pace of the action and you take control for the vast majority of the game, most of the time you are going to win. And hockey, that's like the one sport where we saw it in Vegas yesterday, where Vegas had like a million shots against Winnipeg, and they barely won in overtime. I think it was like 2-1, something like that. Like it was an outright domination by Vegas, and yet Winnipeg, one shot that ricochets off of somebody's, leg, and it just goes in, and they win the game. Like hockey is such a strange sport in that regard that sometimes, especially when you're losing, when you're in a skid like that, it does feel like it's a snowball effect. But if you take a step back and you watch the game and how it just transpired, and you take a look at, okay, the Rangers played well 5-on-5. They played well in all situations. The puck just didn't go their way that game, and they lose. You start to feel better about how they've played overall. Columbus and like those losses aside, Colorado, they lost in overtime, but they played well. Against the Islanders, they lost. They didn't score a goal, but they should have. They did play
they got
well.
A couple posts too.
Yeah, the puck just didn't go in the net. It happens. And then you get to this weekend, and all of a sudden, the gates are open, and all these goals are going into the net. So sometimes a team can play well and still lose, but other times, like we saw last season, the Rangers were pretty bad at 5-on-5, not very good at all. Bottom 10 in a lot of categories on possession and all these things, and they still won a bunch of games. Hockey is a weird sport, man. Like sometimes you play well, you still lose.
It's the one sport that hasn't had all of its inefficiencies ironed out yet, the way baseball has, the way football has, the way basketball has, where we've kind of seen all of those sports really dramatically transform in the way they're played in the last 5 to 10 years. Baseball, you have the 3 true outcomes of walk, home run or strikeout. Basketball, you have the emphasis on the three. Football, you have the emphasis on the spread offense of getting extra receivers on the field because those are your best athletes. The more speed you put on the field, the more likely you are to have someone open. Hockey, we haven't had any kind of breakthrough like that because of the inherent randomness of it. I mean, the working theory amongst hockey people is that the next thing is going to be positionless guys, where you're going to have somebody who can float between forward and defense, and you're going to end up with a 4-1 alignment as opposed to a 3-2 alignment. But we haven't seen any teams really be brave enough to try that. So in the moment, still trying to figure out what this Rangers team is going to look like. The process is good. For the first time in quite a long time, the process of how they're playing at 5-on-5 is good. Now, the team defense is a bit of concern, and I want to talk about it in the context of the Islanders game.
Really quickly about positionless hockey, like I would argue that we have seen that kind of player in the NHL, not Dustin Buffalo, like not those not Brent Burns, people that are actually good at defense, but like we've seen players like Patrice Bergeron that is a forward and is has never been a defenseman, but he is a 200 feet player of like, he's the first one up and he's the first one back at all times. He's not on the blue line and he's not, up and defending the rush on the counterattack. But when he is deep inside the offensive zone, he is quickly the first forward back in order to defend an oncoming attack the other way. So while he's not a defenseman, he's not. That's just not what he does. You can argue that as one of the best defensive forwards that we've ever seen, is that the closest to positionless hockey that we have gotten to this point? Because like I don't think that we will ever see a true positionless hockey, just because it's so the little details in the differing positions are so vast that it's really difficult. I mean, with Brent Burns and Dustin Byfuglien, we've seen it in the past where like these guys can score a lot of goals, but Brent Burns on defense wasn't really good at playing defense. Like Dustin Byfuglien on defense wasn't really good at playing defense. Like you need somebody that can be elite as a scorer, and if you're an elite scorer, well then they need your scoring. Like if you need the effort to do one of those two things really well. If you are an elite defender, we need you on the blue line. Like I don't know if hockey will get to true positionless play because of the amount of effort and the amount of IQ it takes to play one position, let alone two.
Well, I mean, part of that is also just the way hockey systems work, where it's not just this position goes there. It's usually the first person in the zone goes there, which goes into that point about how you're going to deploy assignments if you were to have a 4-1 alignment, something like that. But speaking of people who are not good at defense, during the Islander game, I think the Islanders ran the backdoor cross crease pass about 15 times. It kind of looked like watching somebody play the EA Sports NHL franchise, where they just kept going for that backdoor tap in, and it was there all night. The Islanders missed so many good scoring chances. If you go back and look at the shot maps from the game last Wednesday, the Islanders missed the net like 6 times from really high danger areas, which is why the Rangers are very heavily favored in the high danger and expected goals from last Wednesday's game. But just I don't know on what planet Jacob Trouba was on the Josh Bailey goal, where he was out at the point and he's a defenseman and they were in the zone and in zone coverage. And just, again, we've talked about this more than once. You got to communicate with your partner. He left Keandre by himself. Bailey comes in, and as Bailey got into position to receive that pass, I go, Bailey has the tap in before. When you can see the play happening because there is that much space on the ice because someone is so out of position, that's problematic. If I, from my cheap seat, can tell someone is that out of position, what do you think the Islanders are going to do, Andrew?
I want to preface this by saying, like, I don't have a vendetta against Jacob Trouba. Like, I really hope that he plays.
We want him to be good.
We want Jacob Trouba to be a good hockey player. He hasn't been. Like, it's
Not
so.
to start the year now.
I know. There's other hockey podcasts, and Blue Shirts Breakaway is one of those podcasts that defends Jacob Trouba and sees the good in him. And while I'm not saying that he's out here like being exclusively bad and never been good ever, He has to be better in the defensive zone. I mean, he has been a black hole in the defensive end this entire season up to this point. Like, he has to figure it out. To like, this is not his first foray into the NHL. This man is a captain. He's getting paid a lot of money to be here for a long time. He's wanted to be here for a long time. He's got the opportunity. He's playing top 4 minutes. This man needs to be better defensively, and he needs to figure it out really quickly. Otherwise, like, this is not going to end well for this roster, because like, the Rangers don't have the cap space to go out and acquire another top 4 defenseman. Obviously, they like him enough to give him the captaincy. The Rangers wouldn't give him the C and then 6 weeks later say, you know what? Actually, nah, like, you're on the move. He also, I think, has a no move clause, so that wouldn't, like, he'd have to waive on that anyway. But like, the Rangers are very content with having him on the blue line, then he has to be better, because like, this is getting really annoying watching him game after game just completely miss his his positioning, doesn't really know what's going on the ice. He takes a strain, he moves into a strange situation instead of like just playing his position properly, and not going rogue and into the corner boards or doing whatever. Dude, just communicate with your defenseman and play the position. Like, this man is doing everything except for what he's supposed to be doing in his defensive end. Like, dude, please. I feel like I'm going crazy because a lot of people are still defending Jacob Trouba, and while he is doing good things as well, I'm not saying he's not. My man loses his assignment a lot. A lot. He does it often, and it's very concerning that a man of Jacob Trouba's stature loses his man as frequently as he does. It is concerning, and we have to be vocal about it, because like, we have to be. This is why this is the most objective Rangers podcast in town. Like, we have to. We're seeing, Jacob Trouba just completely forget where the puck is, where his man is, what the situation calls for. He's out here doing Jacob Trouba things, and a lot of times it results with the puck being in the back of the Rangers net, and it has to stop.
Okay, so while you were talking, I went and looked because I was curious. He's league average in terms of expected goals against when you look at hockey vises. He's plus minus 0% over league average defensively. So for somebody who's getting paid what he's getting paid, you would like him to be suppressing scoring chances against. And the biggest thing is just it seems like Trouba is the main culprits of this, because the style he plays. His first instinct when there is a play to be made is to skate to it and try and break it up with his body, as opposed to trying to be in the right position. And that's why it seems like, and this is anecdotal. I remember watching in the game saying, oh, this doesn't look right. And then they show the replay. And while you were talking, it reminded me of the play in the Colorado game where they won the faceoff in the offensive zone. He got caught in between. He didn't go for the puck, but he didn't start skating backwards to break it up. The Colorado player recovered the loose puck, skated around him. Trouba made a half-hearted slash, took a bad penalty, didn't knock the guy down, and still let him get the breakaway, which Shesterkin luckily made a save on. But just, it's the little things like that where, and again, anecdotal evidence, when you look at the underlying numbers, he's playing fine, but the mistakes are just so glaring. That's why it seems like Andrew and I are constantly ragging on him, because the mistakes he makes, they get burned in your mind because they're easy to see.
When you're a top 4 defenseman in the NHL, making as much money as he is, I think his contract was 8 times 8. Like, this man is making a lot 7 times 8. I mean, he's making $8 million a year. When you're making $8 million a year to be a defenseman in the NHL, and you make at least one glaring mistake every game that either ends up in the back of your net or almost goes in the back of your net, to where a lot of fans and people that are up in the stands and otherwise are seeing the things that you're doing wrong, and you're not playing to that kind of contract. It's very disturbing, because you're getting paid all this money essentially to be an elite top 4 defenseman that can defend. And right now, Jacob Trouba is getting paid $8 million to hit things, to shoot whenever he has the puck at all times, and not play a lot of defense. And it's we we say things and we highlight them to hopefully see some improvement. If Jacob Trouba starts playing tomorrow like an elite top four defenseman, then we will point that out. It's like, hey, Jacob Trouba, he had these mistakes earlier on in the season, but now he's gotten into form. He's playing a lot better. Like, it's not like we want Jacob Trouba to be terrible, but let's be honest about it here. Jacob Trouba, to this point this season, has been really just not great in his defensive end.
Disappointing. I would say disappointing.
Right. And we talked about it before the season even began. Like, your captain should be one of the top 5 players on the team. And right now, Jacob Trouba not even is close to playing like one. Like, he is disappointing in his own end. And he has to get better for the Rangers to go deep in the playoffs.
Okay, so now that we've gotten the manic depressive part of the episode out of the way, where the Rangers couldn't put the puck in the net and they really had a hard time against the Islanders, the game against Dallas was kind of weird because the final score, and we've talked about this a lot so far, doesn't really reflect how that game went. It really doesn't feel like the Rangers won that game 6-3. That game was tied in the third period, very much hanging in the balance, and the Rangers pulled away towards the end. The thing I wanted to touch on in regards to this game, friend of the show, Scott Wedgwood, came into the game. He was able to make a couple nice saves, and then the Rangers, they got into, and it was weird because like the Rangers and Stars aren't rivals, but that game was really chippy for like a 2:00 Saturday game, which is very weird to me.
It was the Nils Lundqvist revenge game. I mean, there's a revenge game. The Rangers they're just gonna play revenge games this whole season. I feel like every game there's some kind of revenge.
Yeah, Tony DeAngelo revenge game tomorrow.
That's
which
right.
We'll talk about towards the end.
I mean, listen, like even last night, Patrick Nemeth revenge game. He didn't do anything for Arizona, but hey, it was a revenge game for him just as much as it was for Nils Lundqvist in Dallas. Like every game, there's some kind of underlying Rangers storyline in there.
So in that Dallas game, and I wrote this down because I found it very interesting. They didn't play Reeves on Saturday. They got their optimal fourth line in there. Gauthier scored that goal. That was very silly, but that was very silly goal. That's on the goalie there. It happens. It happens, but it's part of the game. Occasionally, the goalie gets a little too ambitious, tries to break up the play before it happens. But you saw the potential. I mean, all 4 Ranger lines were pretty good in terms of all the underlying numbers, which is encouraging. The fourth line was all 55% plus in everything, which hasn't happened yet this year before Saturday, which that's notable. And the one other thing I wanted to write down, they did a really good job against Hintz, Pavelski, and Robertson. I know that line had 2 of the 3 Dallas goals, but those are elite players making high-end plays. And yeah, you got outscored 2-1 when they were on the ice, but if you're keeping them in the defensive zone where they're trying to defend you, more often than not, you're probably going to end up doing all right. The Rangers ended up winning, but to do a good job defensively against that group from chances against perspective, that's encouraging from a group that's kind of been up and down defensively.
It definitely, I mean, listen, when you put in good players as opposed to bad players, you tend to do better. Like, I hate for it to always go back to Ryan Reeves and those kind of guys, but like Ryan Reeves he should just be the assistant coach, man. Like if the players like him that much, just have him behind the bench. Just have him be there. Like if the players like him that much and he brings that much to the table, just have him be on the bench because he clearly can't play hockey anymore. Like he's way too slow out there. He never had any offensive talent to begin with, and he's 35 years old now. Like he's slowing down even more so, and he wasn't a really fast skater in his prime, so he's not contributing much of anything when he's on the ice. So if the Rangers really like him, then have him be behind the bench, have him be the 9th assistant coach. Who cares? But like when you bring in even Julien Gauthier, like he has that one move that we all know, that we all laugh about, and if he's the king of the almost goal. He does the move that gets him all alone, and then he has no idea what to do with the puck once he's in that situation. It's like that Plankton meme of like, I don't know, I don't think I get this far. Like he's there, and then once he gets that situation, he has no idea what to do, and the goaltender either stops it or he misses the net or whatever. He finally scores. I mean, there you go. Hallelujah. My man's finally, and it only took an empty net for it to go in. So he's there, but like if Ryan Reeves was there instead of Julien Gauthier, which would have been the situation had the switch not happened, Ryan Reeves ain't getting the puck first. Scott Wedgwood is there. He's getting the puck first, and the puck is going the other way. So Julian Gauthier, like, cool. Like, he finally did something that didn't result in a save or another meme. So good. Congrats to Gauthier. But yeah, I mean, when you play good players, or at least better players, instead of players that can't really contribute much of anything besides a hit every now and again, you tend to win more games. But hey, I'm not a head coach in the NHL. I'm not a GM in the NHL. What do I know?
Okay, so the last point on this before we talk about the Arizona game and then start looking forward towards this upcoming week. When I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was Travis Yost of TSN wrote something before the season looking for guys who underperformed their expected goals last season with the opportunity, well, could they break out this year? And one of the people on that list was Gauthier. He was like 9th or 10th in terms of expected goals per 60 and in relation to actual goals per 60, underperforming that number. And he's always been a straight line guy who's pretty fast with no hands to speak of. He has the one move, as Andrew mentioned, but in a vacuum, you are better off with somebody who can at least play the puck on their stick, who can get the puck in transition, which he has been known to do. If you get him the puck, he can skate really fast in a straight line, draw the power move to the net, and he goes into the goalie. That's a decent opportunity. He's a textbook example of why everybody who complains about the Rangers being a little too finesse, a little too east-west, not everything goes well if you just take the puck to the net. There's degrees to this. It's not just, oh, they're soft, they don't go to the net enough. Well, would you rather Zibanejad go to the net and miss the net every single time like Gauthier? There's degrees to this, and it's part of the conversation. But the last point I want to make on this, he's better than some of the bodies they've thrown out there in that bottom six over the last couple of years. I mean, the third line wasn't great against Arizona. I think I wrote it down. Yeah, they weren't amazing against Arizona, but, they're close to even. If you're close to even from your third line without Hedel, and once Hedel comes back, you'll probably end up putting Goudreau further down in the lineup on the fourth line, and it's going to probably force Gauthier out, which is unfortunate. But if you're going to have okay bottom six metrics, you're going to rely on your top six to score a lot. But right now, the recipe for success is pretty straightforward. They're doing it. They just got to finish these opportunities because they're making good opportunities.
The one thing that we have to highlight here, because it's very important to note, is that through this season so far, the Rangers have played 10 games, and their first line center, Mika Zibanejad, has 6 goals and 6 assists through 10 games. So he has 12 points. He's doing well. He has 6 goals. 5 were on the power play, and 1 was shorthanded. Mika Zibanejad, through 10 games, has 0 goals at 5-on-5. And that is a frightening statistic, because any way you look at it, all it says is that Mika Zibanejad, at least to this point now, I mean, he's had chances and all these things, but like at the end of the day, all it says is that currently Mika Zibanejad is a better version of Mike Hoffman in terms of.
All right, relax. You're getting a little Skip Bayless of hockey.
I'm a little okay. I mean, like it's mostly tongue in cheek, but like Mika Zibanejad has to start scoring at 5-on-5. I mean, this Mika Zibanejad is too good right now to be just I don't want to say useless at 5-on-5, but like just he has to contribute more on the offensive end when the Rangers aren't up a man, because like that was kind of a concern throughout the playoffs last season as well, where Mika Zibanejad was doing a lot of damage and he was really good when the Rangers were up a man, but as soon as they got to even strength, Mika Zibanejad was nowhere to be seen for large stretches of the game, and that has kind of continued to this point. 0 goals at 5-on-5 through 10 games for a first line center is just not good enough. And for how great he's been on the power play and this and that, like that's all peaches and roses. The game is mostly played at 5-on-5, and when you have 0 goals through 10 games when everybody's on the ice, it's a little bit concerning. Maybe not Mike Hoffman level, but it was mostly a joke. But it's still something to keep an eye on as the season goes along.
So while you were talking there, I was looking something up because I was curious and I wanted to fact check and see if he was getting unlucky or if he's actually struggling at 5-on-5. So, I mean, realistically, Hockey Viz has him at 6.5 expected goals all situation with 6 actual goals, which is, that would speak to not really generating anything at 5-on-5. But to put a bow on this point and then move on to the Arizona game, on ice shooting percentage for Zibanejad at 5-on-5 is 3.6%. That's usually closer to 9%. And that includes who he's on the ice with at the time. So that includes Kakko, that includes Kreider. They haven't really gotten that line going in terms of in terms of actually putting the puck in the net.
And Kakko, by the way, has looked really good. Like he's looked very good to this point. Not a lot of counting stats, which is what people that only read the box score will see. But if you watch the game and you watch Kakko, he is a lot stronger. He's a lot more assertive. He makes a lot of the little plays. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but Kakko is definitely a player who has looked a lot better so far this season than at any other point of his career.
Oh, 100%. He's the biggest thing with him is decisiveness. He knows what he wants to do with the puck now, as opposed to the first 3 years of his career where his instinct was always to defer because he didn't want to make a mistake, because he didn't want to get pushed down the lineup or taken out of the lineup. Whereas now, because he's playing in the top 6 with good players like Zibanejad and Kreider, he feels empowered to make the decisions, to make the difficult play, because he has line mates who are going to be capable of finishing them and doing well. And in terms of the Arizona game, which we won't talk too much about, but that is a game that was hanging in the balance there. Arizona had the lead at one point. It was 2-1 at one point, and I was like, all right, we're going to see if this group actually is what we think they are or not, because Arizona played reasonably well. I would say they were okay at 5-on-5. The Gunther goal was kind of a breakdown. That was unfortunate, but realistically, you have too much talent to be losing to Arizona. And that was not a terrific effort in terms of process. The expected goals, the Corsi, all that stuff, it's fine for that game, but you can't be letting Arizona hang around in a game like that. And to their credit, the Rangers' high-end talent, Panarin and Kreider, especially the assist Kreider had on the power play to Zibanejad was outstanding. But that's a game where the Rangers really got into that habit last year was, okay, we need a goal. Somebody in the top 6 do something or we're losing this game. That works against Arizona. That does not work against Tampa.
No.
That does not work against Carolina. That's what Andrew and I are talking about when we're saying we want more consistent, we want good process, because the process has been good. So if they play like this more often than not, they're going to end up scoring more goals. And I think the goals will come, especially for that first line that's kind of gotten off to a rough start. Kreider in particular has had just shooting regression. That is just how hockey works. You're not going to shoot 20-something% multiple years in a row unless you're an Alex Ovechkin type guy. And even that, Ovechkin is something like 17-18% for his career, because so many of Kreider's goals are deflections and tips. Those are more likely to result in goals because they're more dangerous. They come from a better area. But the goals will come. They just can't be relying on their high-end guys to do everything. I understand they're shorthanded right now, so it's a little bit different. Once Hedl comes back in, I imagine that third line will have a little bit more offensive bite. But come on, Arizona? Really?
And also, you have to remember who was in net for them. This is Connor Ingram, a guy who I think just got picked off of waivers. Like he's the definition of what a journeyman player is. I mean, my guy is just bouncing from team to team, just trying to fill in where he can and trying to just do whatever to show that he's capable of playing NHL level. And to his credit, he played well. Like there's not a whole lot of situations that he was in that was expressly his fault. I mean, there's the power play was lethal against Rangers. Like there's only so much a goalie can do when that Kreider passes a Zibanejad. What is Connor Ingram supposed to do in that situation? Like that's a goal where it's supposed to go in 10 out of 10 times, and ideally the Coyotes players are there clogging up the middle of the ice to make sure that those passes don't happen. That didn't happen, so Connor Ingram had to let that puck in. I mean, he tried his best to stop it, but just it went into the net anyway. But yeah, as you said, I agree with you. The Rangers made it a little closer than it should have been. Like this is when you play in that stadium with 5,000 fans, which again I can't believe is where an NHL team is playing. And I know that this is cool for ASU fans and their students and all these things. It's great, and they have a student section with $25 tickets. Like I get all of that. Still not a good look. Like this is the NHL. I mean, come on. This is 5,000 fans
There were a
at
lot of empty seats
an
the
NHL arena. Yeah, and that was a Rangers home game, essentially.
Yeah.
Because there were so many Rangers fans there. There were "Let's Go Rangers" chants. There were "Pot Van Sucks" chants, which I think is the worst chant in professional sports. Retire it. But that's neither here nor there. That was a Rangers home game, essentially, where a large portion of the fans that were in attendance had Rangers blue on and were there cheering on their favorite team. Still too close for comfort. This is a team that's supposed to be really bad. This is a team that's not supposed to go anywhere, and you barely squeak by with a one-goal win. I mean, I'm not complaining because at the end of the day, the Rangers just won the game in regulation. They didn't have to go to overtime. They didn't have to have any close calls. It could have been worse, but conversely, it could have been better. Like you could have made it more than just a 3-2 game. Like but hockey is a weird game of bounces and things like that, and sometimes things just don't go your way, like we talked about earlier. But it's the Coyotes, man. Like it didn't have to be a 3-2 game.
No. So the last thing I want to touch on before we do 3 stars of the week and look ahead towards next week, this upcoming week, they got the power play working a little bit better, and you noticed it against Arizona, especially on the one where they finally did score with the Zibanejad goal on the Kreider assist. They stopped forcing the cross-seam pass and started working more down low, closer to the net. And the benefit of doing that is they're consolidating space when they have the when they have the 5-on-4. What they're doing, when they have Fox come inward, they're trying to get a penalty killer to break out of structure to come towards Fox. And when they get somebody to bite towards who's holding the puck, the numbers advantage gets better because 4-on-3 and more space is better than 5-on-4 and less space. So when they do that, when that extra player skates out of structure and it becomes a 4-on-3, you're able to do more creative things towards the net. And you saw it with the Kreider tip pass to Zibanejad. That play usually isn't there because the puck is usually closer to the circles as opposed to the bottom of the circles, which is where that pass originally came from. And it's good to see that they adapted. They ran a few different things on that power play until they got the Zibanejad goal. But an 0 for 15 with this much talent is just a little bit of a combination of bad luck and other teams are going to adapt. You got to be able to figure other things out. And it's why one of my 3 stars you're going to see in a minute here is who it is. But it was encouraging to see them not just mindlessly forcing that pass to the middle or settling for Fox shots that get blocked at the point or Trocheck in the middle there shooting right into a defenseman. Because the entire point of Trocheck being in the middle there between the 2 penalty killers is to get them to come towards him, which is going to open up the cross-seam pass. But if that's not there, they have to figure something else out, and they were able to against Arizona. You got to see it more consistently, but the hope is the power play is going to be close to what it was last year.
It's also good to see the Rangers beat bad teams because we didn't see the whole lot of that last week. We were obviously we were not very happy with the effort that we saw against bad teams, especially against Columbus. I don't know what that was, but that was an atrocious performance. But at least in Arizona, again, maybe the performance wasn't as good as we wanted it to be, but at least they won the game, which is more than we could say about their efforts last week. So ultimately, it's better than what we saw against bad teams earlier on, but they won the game, so there's less to complain about when ultimately the Rangers win the game as opposed to lose it. They could have, if they played a better team and they played the exact same way, they lose 100%. They lose that game, but against Arizona, I would have liked to see more effort. I would have liked to see more just trying to prevent a loss that shouldn't be a loss, because there's you play for you have to play for a win or you play not to lose, and the Rangers for like periods of that game were just like, we'll win the game anyway, it's fine. It didn't work out against Columbus, but then the power play got on it and they won the game for the Rangers. But at 5-on-5, there's still more to be desired, and hopefully as the season goes along, we'll see more 5-on-5 scoring. But the power play bailed them out. Fine, sure. Let's hope that against better teams moving forward, they get a more overall effort from all situations of the ice.
Yeah, the 5-on-5 offense will come. Last thing, Shesterkin on a back-to-back in October? Any thoughts?
Well,
It
Gallant
worked,
Gallant
but
played Halak after a 2-day rest, and he was terrible. So I guess the Gallant doesn't have a whole lot of faith in Halak right now, which is understandable given how he played the last time. So maybe Gallant just wants to see Halak work more with the Rangers. Who is this is the name of their goalie guru that I forget the name of?
Benoit. Benoit
Yeah,
there?
yes. But like, I don't like it. I also don't hate it from that perspective of like, hey, especially because Shesterkin hasn't been the elite god that he's been last season. Where okay, I can see the idea of Gallant going, okay, Shesterkin, you got the win against the Stars. You did give up 3 goals. Maybe he had a conversation with him, like, hey, do you want this Arizona game if only just to get the ball rolling for you more? Is it because we've given Halak maybe too many games to start the season? Like, do you just want this game to get some consistency out of you? And I'm sure they probably had that conversation. And Shesterkin was like, yes, give it to me. Like, I know Shesterkin like loves to play always, but especially in October, maybe Gallant was maybe against it in the beginning, but after a conversation with Gallant and Benoit, he decided to go with Shesterkin just to get him in the rhythm more. Like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of this, but at the same time, I don't hate it either. I can see the reasoning, and especially against the Coyotes, a game that, like we talked about, they didn't play their best in. They needed Shesterkin to make a couple of those big saves, and he made them, and they won the game. So I would think Shesterkin plays against Philadelphia. I don't think it's going to be Halak. I guess we'll see.
Okay, so 3 stars of the week. I went first last week. You can start us off. You, sir, picked 3 good answers. I like your 3.
So yeah, I mean, Panarin obviously one of the 3. We don't have them ranked or anything. They're just the 3 stars of the week, at least for
Yes.
me. Panarin, sensational on the power play and doing things outside the power play as well that just make him an elite player. He got 3 points I think last night on his birthday. My man's is doing everything to solidify him as one of the best players in the NHL. My second star is Julian Gauthier for finally scoring a goal after 70 quadrillion opportunities to do it in seasons past and scoring on like none of them. He's finally scored. So, hey, there you go. There's 1 of 3 stars. And the third star I have is all of the Rangers fans that came out to the Arizona Coyotes arena. And what was it called? Mullet Arena or something like that?
Mullet Arena, yep.
Mullet Arena. 5,000 fans. And I don't know, like maybe half of those were Rangers fans. They traveled well and they showed up. They were loud. They were cheering their team. They were doing the really stupid Potvin sucks chant, which does not apply to Arizona. I don't like if you did it against the Islanders, it makes sense to do it against the Islanders. To do it against Arizona, maybe don't do that. But yeah, third start of the game or whatever start of the game of the week to the Rangers fans. They traveled well. I'm sure it was a hell of a lot cheaper to travel to Arizona and go to a Coyotes game than to watch a game here. So hats off to them. They traveled well, and those are my 3 stars. Nick, what about you?
I have Panarin too. Still putting up the counting stats. The power play is still working. Zibanejad, 12 points in 10 games. Nothing to sneeze at. That's really good production. Yeah, it's got to call that 5-on-5, but I think the way they're playing, those goals will come. And last, I have Gallant for 2 separate reasons. One, he rolled the dice. Giving your starting goalie 2 games back-to-back in October is a little aggressive. It's a gamble. It worked. They won both games. You got credit for that from me. I've been critical of Gallant for some of his decision-making, especially because he never explains any of his decisions. It's just, I'm Gerard Gallant. This is my decision. Live with it. And lastly, the power play got working again, which was a real concern. And it's because they made tactical adjustments. Now, whether that's Mike Kelly, who runs the power play, or Gallant, whatever, I'm giving credit to Gallant for, having them figure out the power play when they needed it, to be honest with you, because it didn't seem like the offense was coming for a while, especially that game against the Islanders. It was infuriating. And it was funny. At the game on Wednesday, Dennis Potvin was there, and lo and behold, the Ranger fans still got enough people to get a Potvin sucks chant going.
He was giving up Potvin socks, which I mean, that's great.
That's good.
That's
good
commitment to
marketing.
the bit. I mean, you know, the fans are gonna chant that, and they chant it every game. You might as well cash in on it, and that's what he did. The songs
Yeah.
actually look good as well. Like I gotta give him credit. Like it's one thing to kind of be a sourpuss about it and just kind of trash it and just like not be on board with it. The Rangers have been doing it for so long that he's cashing in on it. Like he's in on the meme. Like he's in on the joke. He's giving out the Pop Van socks. He's selling them. Like hats off to him. He's in on it. Like now it's funny.
Yes.
The chant is terrible, but now it's funny because he's in on it.
Okay, so Rangers only play 3 times this week, which again, like we talked about last week and the week before, the schedule is not doing them any favors. They can't get any kind of rhythm because it's 2 days off, 1 day off, 3 days off, back to back, no game, 2 days off, and it's hard to get into a rhythm, especially the goalies. They got to find a way to get Halak relatively confident in himself because he is going to have to start 20 to 25 games this year. They got to get Igor on a heater. He's slowly making his way up the goals saved above expected leaderboard. I imagine he's going to finish top 5 in that. I'm not particularly worried. So 2 mediocre teams and then the Bruins, who might be the best team in the league at the moment, on Thursday. Take care of the Flyers, please. Please take care of the Flyers. And then Detroit, the Rangers in Detroit always play each other weird. Those games are always nationally televised. It always goes to overtime. The ghost of Jimmy Howard is going to make a save at some point in this game. I'm a little worried about Detroit because for whatever reason, they always give the Rangers a hard time. But the Boston game, I'm very excited. Charlie McAvoy skated today in a full practice, which if they get him back, they've got Marchand came back on Thursday last week from double hip surgery, a month ahead of schedule. They're 8-1-1 out of the gate. They've been absolutely on fire. Very excited to watch that game on Thursday. I'm curious to see if they're going to go with Swayman or Olmark because both have been really good to start the year.
Carter Hart has actually looked phenomenal.
Yes,
and
he really has.
It's interesting to see the Flyers because the Flyers themselves haven't particularly been all that great, but Carter Hart has literally been carrying the whole team on his back en route to wins. He's doing what Lundqvist did a few years ago, and the Rangers were not very good, but they got into the playoffs anyway because of him. That's what Carter Hart has done so far for Philadelphia, in that his team in front of him is kind of mid, kind of not great. But Carter Hart has played so exceptionally well that the Flyers, despite their inability to be good on the ice, have won games because Carter Hart has just not allowed anything in it to go into his own net. So it'll be interesting to see how the team plays against that kind of system tomorrow because, well, they were that system for the better part of the 21st century. So it'll be that'll be a fun game. Detroit, as you said, Jimmy Howard is going to come out of retirement and put up a 55 save shutout against them. And then against the Bruins, they're one of the best teams in the league. Let's see how the Rangers play against that kind of opponent. And then when we get back and record the podcast next Monday, I'm very interested to see what kind of record they'll have. It should be at least 2 wins on the board for them. Should being, the word in that sentence that is carrying a lot of weight here, because Detroit and Philadelphia, you expect to beat those teams, and yet the Rangers should it be Columbus, and yet that didn't happen. So who knows? But I expect them to win at least 2 games. With Boston, it's always going to be a coin flip. The Bruins have played very well, like you've said. The Rangers played toe-to-toe against the Avalanche and skated away with 1 point. Perhaps they should have had 2. They played very well for large portions of that game. If they play the same way against Boston they did against Colorado, it's going to be a very, very good game.
I'm very excited to see it. All right, housekeeping. Make sure you are subscribed to the show on whatever content platform you like to listen or watch. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, like the video, help other people find the video. When you like and rate things, it boosts the show signal and other people are able to find it easier. If you are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave the show a review. Spotify, you have to listen to an episode before you can leave a review. If you're listening to this, you probably have the ability to leave a review. Please do that. The show's socials, Liberty Blue Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Be sure to follow those for clips, for shit posting, for memes, for instant reaction if anything crazy happens. The personals, at Chelney Andrew, Chelney. Mine is Nick Zararis, Nick Zararis. Be sure to follow those. I'm 13 away from 5,000, which, God, I need to get a fucking life so badly. So badly.
It's always the numbies. When the numbies are going up, it's always a great feeling, right? When the numbies are going up as opposed to going down, hey, more people following you, the better, man.
Hey, I don't know. I'm starting to feel like what did Steve Dangle call himself? The fool who walks around with keys jingling. Yeah, that's kind of how it feels. But just where the amount of people I have who are like, can't wait to listen to you complain when they have a particularly bad game. Or last week I had like 4 different people text me like, "You're sure you're not mad that they lost 4 games in a row?" Like that's how like there's a little bit of a performance art where people enjoy my psychosis when it comes to the Rangers. Yeah, be sure we'll be back next week. Yeah, I got to go take a shower, even though I just took a shower. I got to get this shirt off. We'll see you next week.
All right. Well, we'll talk.